How do you do, fellow kids? If you're in your late 20s, early 30s, you, like me, probably grew up watching cartoons on the Kids WB programming block when you were, well, a kid. Jackie Chan Adventures, Men in Black, the animated series, and especially Pokemon. I watched Pokemon more than a human being should probably ever watch Pokemon. Pokemon was revolutionary. I loved Pokemon. Do you remember Pokemon? But of course, among the lineup of 6 to 11-year-old aimed animation was the Zeta Project, a spin-off of the much better received Batman Beyond, which you should know well enough by now if you've been keeping up with this month's endless onslaught of Zeta Project videos here on the Watchtower Database YouTube channel. A sentence I never thought I'd say: like, comment, and subscribe. Yeah, that one rolls off the tongue much better. But unlike all those other shows I mentioned a second ago, which were all more or less set in the actual familiar present-day early 2000s world kids were literally living inside of, aliens and magic talismans and mythical beings that reside inside spheres on a 10-year-old's Jinko jeans belt loops are all real, right? The Zeta Project took place decades ahead of then, whenever then was. A future so bright it doesn't even have shading, in the first season anyway. Yes, this was the 40 years on future of the DC animated universe, the eventual reality of the same timeline on which existed the likes of Batman the Animated Series, Justice League Unlimited, and so on. I mean, Justice League Unlimited hadn't come out yet, but you know what I'm saying. And it was a future that featured technology almost exclusively beyond, pun intended, our own technological achievements, at least in 2001. Every car and motorcycle was a Back to the Future hovercraft. Glasses didn't need arms to stay on your face like they were invented by Steve Martin. That's a deep cut. They even had big Pokemon-style video phones. I told ya, Pokemon was revolutionary. Well, I guess not everything was properly predicted. Hotels of the 2040s are offering 20,000 cable TV channels, yet the DCAU has HBO Max now, thanks to some comic the robots showed me, Batman the Adventures Continue. Man, we really missed a lot during the time jump, didn't we? Understandably, because it didn't constantly feature tentpole heroes like Batman or Superman. The Zeta Project is, oh, let's be honest, it's probably the most forgotten of all of the DCAU. Like that episode of Batman where Batman forgets who he is and gets stuck at an illegal labor camp. Actually, I don't know if it's anything like that. But today, I want to show you, dear viewer, that you've been sleeping on this puppy. That the Zeta Project is even more connected to the expanded universe than you may have ever thought. Beneath all the surface-level ingenuity of this Batman Beyond era future lay a darker, more dystopian technological secret: infiltration units. These were government-controlled synthoids, programmed to replace and ultimately destroy or otherwise incapacitate specific high-value targets often confirmed or believed to be involved with terrorist organizations. The infiltration unit, or IU, would transform their physical appearance holographically, swoop in, get rid of the original person, take their place, and stick around to gather any more intel they could while undercover. In Zeta's first appearance in the Batman Beyond episode Zeta, this holographic makeover expanded to be able to combine attributes of past targets in the IU's database to create essentially a new person. This was perhaps the most advanced technology ever seen in the Beyond era future. But how did we get here? The larger animated universe was full of tech we don't have in real life, as far as we know. I mean, do you have an electron discharge cannon? I didn't think so. And as part of that universe, the Zeta Project must have had a number of precursors that led to its development, right? Sorry, I'm not talking about the show, the Zeta Project. I'm talking about the Zeta Project, the project. The project that led to the creation of Zeta, Zeta's project. That's why the show is called that. Spoilers. So today we're going to comb through the entire DCAU, looking for any possible clues we can in present-day stories that may just canonically link to the robotics technology of the Zeta Project. The show. You know what? I'm gonna call the show TZP and the project the Zeta Project. Is that okay? Comment below if you like that idea. For within this robotics recap may just lie one of the darkest secrets of the entire DC animated universe. I promise this video is cool and good and you will like it. Of course, as is probably the first thing to come to mind, nearly identical to Zeta robots showed up in the JL episode Secret Society, as well as JLU's Fearful Symmetry. But that's the most obvious, blatant callback. forward? Now, I want to dig really deep here. I want to see if there's anything we can actually trace linearly across these shows that leads us directly to Zeta, and that might help us better understand his character and his importance in the DCAU. Let's establish something right here at the start to help us backtrack. The Zeta Project, the project, consisted of 6 team members, who we see in holographic display at the end of the TZP episode, His Maker's Name. Firstly, of course, we have the head of the project, Dr. Eli Selig, the scientist that Zeta and Ro are trying to track down for the show's entire run. Next, we have Nelson Arroyo, robotics expert, who gifted Zeta this data in the first place. Zeta data. Then there's Thomas Boyle, who specializes in operations under extreme conditions, like intense weather or volcanic heat, that sort of thing. He was a bit more of a literally mustache-twirling bad guy by the time Z and Ro met up with him, and I guess he's supposed to be this kind of frumpy dude with the same mustache? Whatever, it's close enough. Marcus Edmund was the hologram expert, who I can only assume is supposed to match the guy on the far right, even though he has glasses, but maybe Edmund got contacts or LASIK. It's the future after all. We don't know what eye things are in the future. Could be Google Glass, making a comeback. Dr. We don't learn his first name, Myrell, Servo Motors, who, despite setting up a youth disability center, was pawning inventions on the black market. And I guess, is this guy? That's Warren McGinnis. I mean, it's not, but it is. And finally, Scientist Man number 6, who we never actually meet on the show, but bears a striking resemblance to this froofy World Assembly ambassador we see a handful of times on Justice League. Since we don't meet the latter half of this group until the 2nd season, showing them all in the 2nd episode was probably a budget-related move of, hey, we got all these character models, we should just use them and no one will ever notice except me. We'll figure out something better later. Except then they show these same mismatched designs in the final episode of the show. Really, this recycle just means that the 6th guy isn't based on the ambassador, but the other way around, and he's on a time travel adventure. I really want to do a video just like following the lives and like career trajectories of random background extras, but I am getting very off topic. Some of these guys are going to come into play sort of soon, so with all of that establishing info out of the way, let's get to the tech side of things. We're going to get into fan theory territory eventually, but believe me, the stuff we're going to hit along the way is surprisingly well grounded. Let me explain. The tech of the DCAU in general is some of the most awe-inspiring and simultaneously ridiculously over-the-top sci-fi gobbledygook you can imagine. A popular fan theory, not of my own creation, suggests that after Vandal Savage sent a laptop containing modern-day tech schematics back in time to World War II in the episode The Savage Time, even though the Justice League stopped him and brought back the timeline we knew, the echoes of that technological tampering would ripple through time and affect the futurism of the DCAU on a global scale. Whether this is the reason or not, we get all sorts of kooky technology throughout the 1940s looking but 1990s set Wonderland that was Batman the Animated Series. They had black and white TVs, but also VHS tapes, but also Tommy guns, but also virtual reality brain interlinking headsets and clock stoppers watches. But in terms of robotics specifically, the first thing that probably hits your noggin is hardac, or holographic analytical reciprocating digital computer. That's hard. Oh, the A is part of digital. That barely works, Emmy-winning Bryn Stevens. Come on. hardac was a living supercomputer invented by Carl Rossum, head of Cybertron Industries. Fun tidbit, Rossum was voiced by William Sanderson, who played a very similar character, J.F. Sebastian, in Blade Runner, the setting and style of which had inspired crew member Edward Neumeier to write RoboCop, which starred Kurtwood Smith as its villain, who also voiced Agent Bennett, the main antagonist of TZP. Come to think of it, that Kurt guy in the courtroom sounded a lot like him too. Weird. TZP character designer Ovi Nedelku even confirmed in an interview a while back that the character of Ro was originally modeled after Blade Runner's Pris. Zeta degrees of separation, am I right? Because Zeta means 6 in the joke. Anyway, in hardac's introductory scene in the episode Heart of Steel, Bruce Wayne asks,
"So tell me, what does hardac do?"
Let's just say that certain projects are under his control.
Projects, you say? Like The Zeta Project? Though hardac was created to construct humanoid robots, unbeknownst to Rossum, hardac was also forging duplicates of various real Gotham City figures, like Commissioner Gordon, Mayor Hill, and these guys, whoever they are, with the goal of replacing the human race with robots.
Squidward! The robots are running the Navy!
Not the Navy!
Yes, you heard me right. Duplicants with an N.
Computer. Access duplicate.
Duplicate. Lifelike robots capable of mimicking human behavior.
This isn't a real word, but they were called replicants in Blade Runner, and even were referred to as replicants in Heart of Steel's original storyboards. So I have to assume that's the reference here. I'd use the Captain America meme, but that implies that I understand anything that I'm saying ever. But like, look at that robot body hardac is assembling behind the curtain. Very Zeta looking if I do say so myself, and I do say so myself. Robot bodies impersonating humans. Sounds familiar, yeah? Now, since Carl Rossum's Cybertron company was dissolved following Batman's destruction of hardac, and Rossum wound up retiring to a simple farm life, it's up in the air whether Rossum himself would have been personally involved with the Zeta Project. But that's not where hardac's story ends. The artificial intelligence returned for his Silicon Soul, where a leftover duplicate of Batman started parading around truly believing itself to be Batman, until it discovered it was a machine and started doing doo-doo bad guy stuff. When the duplicate came to blows with the real Batman, Batman defeated it by convincing it that it had taken his life, something the real Batman would never do. And so it destroyed itself and the hardac programming. After the fight concluded,
It seems it was more than wires and microchips after all. Could it be it had a soul, Alfred? A soul of silicon. But a soul, nonetheless.
hey, that's like the name of the episode. So maybe you see slightly where I'm going with this. So far, we've got robotic bodies that can mimic the appearance of anyone. By 40 some odd years later, it would make sense that that tech would be upgraded by the use of holograms, rather than grafting one single person's visual copy onto a robot and therefore only being able to mimic that one person. And we've got an artificial intelligence, one with a presumed soul, that broke from its programming out of a sense of morality and humanity. But is there anything else we can connect from this era of the DCAU forward to Zeta? Well, I'm glad you definitely asked me that question, because it just so happens that one of the scientists on board the Zeta Project bears the same last name as head of GothCorp, Ferris Boyle, from the BTAS episode Heart of Ice. Ferris Boyle was the Mark Hamill-voiced corrupt business owner responsible for the tragic transformation of Victor Freeze into Mr. Freeze, after Victor was violently halted from continuing his work to save the life of his wife, Nora. Though GothCorp's actual specific scientific focus is never a topic of discussion on screen, from what we see of Victor's own technology before his accident, as well as a GothCorp technician who specialized in sonic research being killed by the Joker in Holiday Nights, and Mr. Freeze eventually stealing several pieces of hardware from the company to create a comically humongous freeze cannon. Will it comically humongous freeze cannon? Yes, it will. It's easy enough to wager that GothCorp was more than just the people company, but in fact a major scientific conglomerate in Gotham City. In fact, Batman's alter ego Bruce Wayne would eventually become a shareholder by the time of the Sub-Zero movie. I'm sure if the writers wanted to be like, insert type of science here was researched at GothCorp, they could do it. Deep Freeze villain Grant Walker was also a GothCorp shareholder at one time, and his Definitely Not Disneyland is full of Definitely Not Castle in the Sky robots. Walker was even once partners with Carl Rossum, creator of hardac and this Miyazaki-looking trash can. That all being said, the character surnamed Boyle on the Zeta Project was Thomas Boyle, and though we never get confirmation of his relation, or lack thereof, to Ferris Boyle, Thomas's specialization on the project, as a reminder, was Zeta's durability. His chassis being able to survive and operate in even the most extreme conditions. Not totally unlike a certain ice-themed villain's containment suit, or the chassis of robots able to survive in the frozen conditions of absolutely not Disneyland. Thomas Boyle would turn out to have gone corrupt as well, much like his possibly father, possibly grandfather, possibly uncle or stepdad or second cousins. I don't fully understand how that the numbers, betraying Zeta and Rho in order to fund his newest invention. So while we don't know for sure if these bad apples fell from the same Boyle family tree, the connection seems a little on the nose.
I don't believe in coincidence.
Now, there are plenty of other gadgets, gizmos, who's its, what's its galore throughout BTAS that fall more or less into the robot spectrum, notably Captain Clown, or the Riddler's Minotaur, or that animatronic maid in Mask of the Phantasm that was a little too handsy. But while I could do a whole video on just the tech connections between BTAS and Batman Beyond, these murder bots pointing guns at me just off camera are insisting I stick to Zeta connections. So, continuing to build this groundwork for you so that my big crazy fan theory coming up makes more sense, robotics technology in the DCAU surpassed just the Batman show's notable tech companies as we entered the Superman animated series and met Lex Luthor face to Telly Savalas' face pretty immediately. Luthor's company LexCorp was deep in the robotics world. We got the big ol' Lexoskel 5000 mech suit in the opening episode arc, those spider-like military droids in World's Finest, the prototype police armor that would eventually become that of Steel, hell, everything Brainiac ever did, which half the time was because LOL, I'm still in the LexCorp computers, you will never get me out of here, you bald chump. But one of the most advanced things ever accomplished by LexCorp was, and let me be very articulate about this so nothing is lost, putting a man's brain inside of a robot body flawlessly. Well, there were some flaws. He couldn't taste or smell or physically feel anything, and that kinda sucks. But still, gun-for-hire John Corbin contracted a rare viral disease that was going to kill him unless he accepted Lex Luthor's not shady at all help and transplant his consciousness into a robotic copy of his own body. A, duplicant, if you will. This body was made from a new metal alloy developed by LexCorp called metallo. The metallo body was supposedly indestructible, and Corbin was kept alive through the radiation of a kryptonite heart. Of course, after coming to understand he'd never experience his senses again, the whole shebang naturally drove Corbin mad. And once he discovered that Luthor had deliberately infected him to begin with, in order to justify the experiment, Corbin became the supervillain Metallo and went on to clash with Superman and the Justice League time and time again. Though I'll never understand how all of his skin and clothing are removed when he's walking underwater, but then he just has his half-ripped Two-Face face again the next time we see him, and his shredded shirt. Why would he only put back on the ripped part? Worth noting real quick is that Zeta's body is made of a titanium alloy, mentioned in the show and confirmed in the Zeta Trivia online game from forever ago. But hey, we don't know what metallo is derived from. It's the DCAU's vibranium. Just let me have this one for a sec. Besides the fact that Metallo's body just looks like a spooky Halloween Zeta, what other comparisons can we make between the two characters? Well, we can easily draw parallels between Metallo's mind transfer scenario and that of several others throughout the DCAU, such as the off-screen near apocalypse of 09, which we learned led to Ra's al Ghul overriding his daughter Talia's mind with his own through this big wonky death trap hula hoop Prometheus looking shit, or the Cadmus tech that the Joker stole off screen to implant his consciousness into Robin's body, or whatever experiment allowed a scientist to transfer his brain into the body of an albino gorilla to become the ultra-humanite off screen. Man, a lot of DCAU Frankenstein science happens off screen, doesn't it?
And the cows with the brains of the space aliens broke the plate.
But this technology, however devious, persisted into the DCAU's Beyond era future as well, as we saw Derek Powers' people transplanting Mr. Freeze's brain into a new body in the 2040s, a trial run in hopes of achieving the same with Powers himself. We don't know if LexCorp invented this ridiculously sci-fi technology, or if they, Raish, Monkey Boy, and whoever else just had some mad scientist parallel thinking. But either way, brain transference is out there. It exists. It's canon, and there's one more instance of it in the DCAU that I want to talk about. Robert Vance.
Bob Vance, Vance Refrigeration.
You know, the big, scary, skull-faced computer man from the Batman Beyond episode Lost Soul. I promise this all relates back to Zeta. When you see it, you'll shit bricks. Robert Vance was the founder of the Vance Technology Company in Gotham City, nearly 35 years before the events of Batman Beyond. It was long enough ago that Summer Gleason looks the way we expect her to, but recently enough that her voice actor has changed, like every character when they get older except for Batman. When Vance also developed an incurable disease, he invented a way to transfer his own consciousness into a computer program. It's like when Uncle Alfred showed up to tell Alicia Silverstone how to be Batgirl, but a lot more unsettling because he's a big skull face. It's a lot more like Arnim Zola. I don't know why I didn't lead with that. The computerized Robert Vance, however, was shut down by his company's successors for decades, until his grandson Bobby turned him on.
Phrasing?
And he started doing evil stuff, infiltrating various computer systems and the futuristic Batsuit. The correct one with the red symbol, on a journey toward uploading himself into a new human host, Bobby. Terry, in Nightwing-ish getup, stopped Vance, of course, so this didn't wind up playing out, but it is one more instance of put your brain into a different thing in the modern day DCAU. Another family member of his, simply referred to as Vance, was seen as Watchtower personnel in Justice League Unlimited, actually an undercover agent of Cadmus, further connecting this chain, and... wait. This guy standing next to Old Man Vance looks really familiar. Is that Nelson Arroyo? He was on the Zeta Project! The project! Ah! Okay, so the timeline doesn't necessarily line up real well for this to literally be Nelson Arroyo, unless he ages as gracefully as Tim Drake. But hey, if all the Vances can look pretty dang identical, I can say Nelson and his dad are the same character model and you can't get too angry with me. It works for Data's dad and his dad and his dad and his dad. And don't comment below to tell me I got the lineage wrong. I don't care. It's stupid. Stop it, Star Trek. As a reminder, Arroyo had a PhD in robotics, and being a member of the team who created Zeta and being linked to Vance's company is definitely intriguing. Though in terms of the rest of the members of Project Zeta, I could have just been calling it that the whole time. It would have been way less confusing. Oh my god. We get some possible ties from them to other areas of the DCAU, though none as substantial. Examples, Myrell's servotech could conceivably be connected to that of Dr. Corso from April Moon. Servos were his specialty as well. He even created the ones used in Terry's Batsuit. But servotech was also present in the field generator rings worn by Repeller in Untouchable, developed and owned by Wayne Tech. So despite servos being invented in the 1800s, they seem to be pretty commonplace in the Batman Beyond / the Zeta Project future. Or maybe that is Warren McGinnis. He was a research scientist at Wayne Powers after all, but no, couldn't be him. Right? This is not an actual tangent to focus on. It looks like they just reused his character model, but it's so recognizable, I don't know why they would do that. Why would they do that? Edmund's hologram tech could theoretically be derived from the hard light inventions of Luminous, or hell, tons of sources we've seen throughout the DCAU. Between Thanagarians, Brainiac, Kanjar-O, there's plenty of hologram juices to go around. Batman even saved a hologram of some lady on a railroad track all the way back in BTAS's The Cape and Cowl Conspiracy.
Hologram?
This one's whatever it needs to be. And then we've got Monocle McJustice League, of whom we do not even know the area of expertise. Though now that I'm thinking about it, maybe this guy is the dad or whatever of the future Mr. Peanut in human form, and the ancestor's political connections could explain his descendants' work for the NSA. It's a long shot. But is what I'm about to get into a long shot as well?
Now hold on to your hat and watch those valuables.
With everything that I've laid out in this video, here's where the journey I've been taking you on has been leading. The DC Animated Universe's definition of what is sentient is a little bit loose. If it makes it past broadcast standards and practices to have a hero completely vaporize an alien or a big snake monster or whatever, it falls into a kind of violence gray area. There are plenty of other robotic beings in the DCAU besides Zeta or Robo-Batman that could conceivably have souls, or at least wound up developing their own opinions and emotions. Like Darcy, the living Barbie doll created by the Toyman, who by the time of Static Shock was just trying to live her own life as her own person on her own terms. And even with her, Toyman successfully copied her consciousness into a new nanotech body that was essentially a clone of Static's high school crush.
I'm alive! I'm finally alive!
Or Cynthia, the psychotic girlfriend of Howie Groot in the Batman Beyond episode Terry's Friend Dates a Robot. As she grew more and more jealous of Howie's friendships with other people or flirtations with other girls, she finally snapped and destroyed his parents' house in a rage. She was crafted in a shady, off-the-books factory by Bruce Timm-style Steve Buscemi, and was literally a synthoid, the same kind of robot as Zeta. Creepy Dude even says custom models aren't technically allowed.
Oh, legally, no.
But that doesn't stop him from constantly making duplicates of Killer Croc, Two-Face, the Riddler. These are all synthoids. synthezoids, but he never asks Bruce Wayne why he keeps wanting these or accidentally wrecking them. And what is up with his hair? Why is it almost exactly the same as Terry's? Okay, new fan theory, this guy is Terry's real dad. I'd even loop in the training robot at the future Justice League's Watchtower, who hero Micron seems to have repeated casual sparring sessions with, and even calls Buddy.
You win again, Micron. Best 3 out of 5.
Later, buddy.
In fact, as we see in the TZP episode Change of Heart, there's an entire museum dedicated to the history of robotics.
These robots, they're like a window to my past, my roots.
Many of these are experimental synthoid designs that engineers have developed over the years. Scientists believe that someday robots will look and act just like humans, even live among us without us knowing. But I wouldn't expect that anytime soon.
Which finally leads me to my fan theory that will blow your mind. Which is a pun you will understand in just a second.
You can't use D like this. He's as much a person as me or you. More than you.
What if... Okay, so in the TZP Season 2 debut, Wired, we find out there's a module inside Zeta's head of unknown purpose, and Bennett and the NSA are trying desperately to get to the bottom of things.
I know what I am.
Do you?
Zeta's official Kids WB biography states, Zeta is like a child in a grown-up's body. But what if that module wasn't merely programmed morality, but the actual consciousness of a person who really existed, perhaps even a child?
This is your big fan theory?
Just give me the floor, okay? I got this. What if Zeta truly does have a soul and not just one of silicon or titanium alloy or whatever? Throughout the series, Zeta thrives when he takes the form of a child, notably in episodes like Shadows, where he finds great delight in floating around a wind chamber and playing vid games, or Change of Heart, where he's genuinely enjoying himself on a science exhibit roller coaster.
Yeah!
The first form he chooses when coming up with a disguise is even a child, after Roe suggests he go for a younger look. Couple this with the fact that brain transference, successful brain transference, has been a thing since 40-ish years before this show. This is far from out of the question. Yeah?
I mean, sure. I kind of like it.
Thank you. And look, I get it. This is a big what if. There's never been any producer statement or even plot thread within the show that would specifically suggest this. But, and heavy spoilers here, it was going to be a plot point in the unproduced Season 3 that Roe would be revealed to be a synthoid as well. A studio-mandated plot point, but a plot point nonetheless. In which case, how long are we supposed to believe she has been one? We've followed Roe's journey of self-discovery and hunting down her family the whole show. We met her foster parents, her actual brother, but since we never saw this robot situation play out, and creator Bob Goodman didn't even want it to, if it was ever to be revealed, is it possible that Roe's consciousness was transferred into a robotic body, similar to the situation with Metallo? Otherwise, has she been a synthoid since birth, or whatever the equivalent of birth would be? Roe is canonically 15 years old, but could that mean her mind is of a 15-year-old? Or that maybe she thinks she's 15, but is actually only 2 or 3 biologically? Something Wonder Woman is both thousands of years old and 18 at the same time, something. I'm not trying to lean on the Roe stuff there too much. I mostly bring it up because it's not that crazy of an idea, ammunition for my Zeta theory, fuel for the fire. But aiming back at Zeta, we can see there is an even possibly darker side to this. If Zeta is a real human being's consciousness embedded inside of a robot, why would Dr. Selig want to transplant someone, potentially a kid, into a robot body? Sure, he can do it, but what would his motive be? If this played out in canon, say in Season 3 or 4 or 5 or Zeta, how would it impact our perception of both characters, Z and Selig? And what would their dynamic with each other become? Or rather, what already is their dynamic? And we just don't know it yet. In Change of Heart, we get this line from Roe concerning Dr. Selig.
Well, when we find him, don't start gushing daddy in front of everyone.
What if, and hear me out, Chris Pratt played Zeta in a movie? No, what I'm really getting at is, could Zeta be Dr. Selig's actual offspring? Maybe the child of Selig also had some sort of incurable disease or illness like the others, and this was Selig's only way to save them.
Dr. Selig is scheduled to make a rare appearance at the Grandview Science Museum, lecturing on advanced neural simulators and their practical applications.
Why don't you just tell everyone you have microchips for brains?
Actually, they're not microchips, more like neuro wafers.
The first obvious rebuttal might be, okay, but why would Selig put the kid's brain into a robot that is designed to kill people? And yeah, I get that. But we don't really know all the circumstances of everything that went down during Project Zeta. Maybe it was always Selig's plan to transfer his child's consciousness to save their life, but the rest of the project heads were not in on it. It's very implied that Dr. Selig was the only one on the project that knew they were creating a new form of synthoid, one with a moral conscience and the ability to think for itself. The other team members are consistently afraid of Zeta when they meet him, and or direct our heroes towards Selig for answers about Zeta's programming because they have no answers themselves. But if this operation was only achievable through literal human brain transference, then, well, I at least hope Selig was doing it for the right reasons. Good, life-saving intentions. Or else there's a lot more to the story of Selig Jr. than Kids WB would have allowed you to see. Selig does suggest that he has plans for improving on his design in the series finale. So would Selig have maybe transferred his kid into the Zeta body as a temporary solution, planning to move the consciousness to a newer, more lifelike model later, like one of those much more human-looking synthoids we see in this final episode?
Scientists believe that someday robots will look and act just like humans, even live among us without us knowing. But I wouldn't expect that anytime soon.
In this finale, Selig lays it all out for Zeta and Ro, while Agent Bennett eavesdrops.
Guess there's no harm in telling my little secret. Truth is, I never had the stomach for building weapons. So I put an extra module in Zeta, a conscience, to make him rethink his programming. Didn't matter in the end. The module never activated. Shame, I had plans for that one.
Just wondering if you've considered, Selig might not want to see you.
Sure he will. He created me.
So, somebody created me. Doesn't look like they care how I ended up. Maybe you're not the robot he always wanted.
But he created me.
Whatever.
So, that's my theory. Zeta is not just Selig's technological invention, but his actual child. Or grandchild. He is
an old guy,
after all. Maybe Zeta is connected to GothCorp, maybe he's connected to Hardac, but I think the strongest connection is this mind transference tech, for reasons you've experienced over the past 20 to 30 minutes. You'll love that theory, or hate it, or not have an opinion about it whatsoever. But there it is.
Bob, yeah, he had a whole arc. Zeta does meet his master and find out who he is and what it was meant for him and all that. But that was an arc over several seasons.
Right.
But I think what he was going to find out about himself was a big surprise that, the audience would not expect.
I bet he was Bruce Wayne's biological son.
Hey, wait a second. You'll just have to let me know how you feel about it in the Australia box, the comments, like, subscribe, Patreon. Side note, with all the hardac tech that existed, do you think Metallo's surgery was successful? What if Corbin died during the experiment and Lex Luthor tried to cover it up by constructing a robot duplicate that thought it was Corbin? Metallo was never really John Corbin, but just a silicon soul, like that Batman or whatever other copies that Hardac made in Heart of Steel. Everybody keeps saying that we'll eventually run out of DCAU topics to cover, but damn if this Zeta Project stuff isn't opening my eyes to thousands of background plot lines and characters that we could make endless videos about. But that's okay. 1 month is enough, right? Since we didn't ever get more episodes past Season 2's cliffhanger ending, it's likely we'll never know the truth about most or any of this, but it's something that I personally think could make a really interesting twist in further hypothetical seasons. The Zeta Project left us with a lot of unanswered questions, and all these concepts I brought up today inhabit the same loose, wibbly-wobbly realm of fantastical pseudoscience, but it is all fascinating to consider, I think.
Guess the Tin Man's got a heart after all.
I almost forgot to tell you. I saw him. It was only for a second, but I saw Dr. Selig.
That's great, Z.
He really is out there, and we're gonna find him.
I envy you.
But I thought you didn't care.
So, did you have his smile?
Maybe all these characters were, at one time, actual real people. Maybe just being an artificial intelligence is being a real person. It's the classic Star Trek Data philosophy argument here. And the conversation will continue to be had until our own creation of artificial life. Which, apparently, is a thing we now know is definitely going to happen.
We must hail Ted once more. You are not to show your face. Not a limb, not a finger. You will serve the martinis and stay out of the way.
Yes, sir.
We do not even need to get this one drunk.
Oh, thank God. You guys cut out. I wasn't sure what happened. I just got you back in my life.
Yeah, so Trivia Tuesdays?
I'm sorry?
We need to do a Trivia Tuesdays about Zeta, we need to do it now.
I don't...
There's got to be some obscure, not widely known Zeta-related trivia you could talk about.
Oh, I know.
Unlike Batman Beyond, Zeta has never appeared on the printed page, except this one single time.
Do you want to see the Zeta Project come back for more episodes and get a proper conclusion? Or maybe you just have fond memories of the show from when you were a kid? Send us your Zeta Project positivity by sharing a 30 to 60 second selfie video on Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok with the hashtag BringBackZeta, now through November 27th, for a chance to be featured in the Zeta Month finale. Go! Go!